Hello, Wonderhussy here, hanging out at the site of a future solar farm. That's right, over here is going to be another one of them ginormous solar farms like you see all over the desert in these parts. If you've ever driven down the highway from LA to Vegas or vice versa, well, you may have seen one or two of them off to the side as you're driving. Vast acres of shiny black solar panels twinkling in the desert sun, making all that delicious electricity for us folks back home to charge our electric toothbrushes and electric cars. Well, this one here that's going in right now is called the Yellow Pine Solar Project, and they're putting it in right now as we speak, and there's a lot of folks who aren't too happy about it. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Who cares? I mean, we need power, and well, solar's better and cleaner than fracking or nuclear or buying gas from some corrupt, shady foreign country. I mean, it's just a barren patch of God-forsaken desert. Why not do something useful with it? Well, interestingly, at least in the case of this particular solar plant, there's opposition to it on both sides. Now, I don't need to tell you that there's very few things nowadays that liberals and conservatives will agree on, but this here solar plant is one of them. I mean, when they first proposed putting in this solar plant, I remember I had to go into town over in Pahrump the other day, and Pahrump is pretty much as right-wing as it gets. And even out there on the main intersection in town, there was a pretty sizable crowd of people waving signs and American flags, and gosh, I think there was even one or two people on horseback. I guess the folks in Pahrump are opposed to this solar farm because they want to preserve this open rangeland so they can ride their horses around and, well, not have to look at a bunch of solar panels. And then over on the other side of the spectrum, all them liberal tree huggers have their panties in a twist because apparently not only is this solar farm displacing a bunch of endangered desert tortoise, well, it's also displacing a bunch of old growth yucca. Okay, I know it's kind of snobby of me, but, well, when I think of old growth, I think of those beautiful giant redwoods up in the Pacific Northwest, not these scraggly, spiky, hardcore little guys. But anyway, aside from the tortoise and the yucca, well, I guess there's also an issue with water. Okay, apparently solar farms like this are very water intensive, and I never would have guessed because, well, there's no water needed to power a steam generator or anything. But apparently when they're putting in a new solar farm, they have to clear away the desert to make room for all the panels. And, well, that creates a lot of dust. And out here in the desert, dust can be a real problem and make for really bad air quality. So big construction projects are required to do what's called dust abatement, where you basically just have to dump a bunch of water on the desert to keep the dust down. Because apparently there's also some kind of hard crust on top of the desert floor. I can't remember what the technical term for it is, something like biological soil, but I guess essentially it's just some kind of hard lid on the desert that naturally keeps the dust down. And, well, when they go in and start digging around to put in all these solar panels, they remove that layer of crust, and then, well, dust just gets everywhere. And that's why they have to dump so much water on it for dust abatement. And, well, I guess that's part of what makes these solar farms so water intensive. And that's just while they're building it. Apparently, once it's built, I think they actually do have to keep the panels clean and dust free to maximize their efficiency. So I guess that takes a lot of water too. Anyway, I don't know all the details about it, but I do know that there are a lot of folks who are very opposed to this solar farm going in. But apparently they didn't have enough money or the right kind of political connections because the farm's going in whether they wanted it to or not. And matter of fact, I even read there's supposedly a woman, like a hippie woman, living in a trailer out here somewhere protesting this solar farm. Kind of like, I don't know if you remember back in the 90s, there was a hippie girl who lived in a tree up in Washington State, like one of those really big old growth redwood trees, to stop the logging company from cutting it down. She lived in the tree for a year. Well, I think that's kind of the idea behind this woman in her trailer out here. I'm not sure. I'd love to meet her and talk to her, but, well, I don't see a trailer out here anywhere. Well, maybe I'll see her trailer in the morning because guess what? Tomorrow morning, I'm going on what's called an eco flight. That's right, I'm gonna go up in an airplane and fly over this whole area because it's part of what's called the Amargosa River Drainage Basin, I think. I don't know, these people are taking me on this flight over the whole area and they're gonna tell me all about the water system and why this solar farm is so bad. And well, if I'm lucky, and if I bring my binoculars, maybe I'll be able to look out the window and see that gal's trailer. Anyway, I guess I better get home because I have to get up super ridiculously early tomorrow morning for this eco flight. I have to be at the Pahrump airport at 7:45 a.m. Nighty night. Oh my God, I can't believe I made it semi on time. It's like almost 8 a.m. and I'm here at this little regional airport in Pahrump. And we're about to get in this little Cessna here and fly over the Amargosa River Drainage Basin, or at least part of it. Okay, I'm here with the pilot who's gonna be flying us around. This is Bruce.
Yeah, my name is Bruce Gordon, and I'm the founder of EcoFlight.
Oh, you're the founder?
I'm the founder, yeah.
And so you're volunteering your services as a pilot?
Yes. What we do is we raise money we're a non-profit. So we raise money from foundations and generous individuals who contribute so that we can bring flight to groups like yours and groups like these guys and people that are doing good work on environmental issues. Our mission is to educate and advocate for the environment using small airplanes.
Oh, okay.
So we do this by flying media representatives.
Media representatives.
Media
That's
representatives.
YouTube, Bruce.
Yeah, that's media. That's, to me it is. It sure gets a
Oh,
lot
well,
of
I like you
love,
already.
but
Thank
yeah.
you.
Anyway, politicians, media representatives, concerned citizens.
You're just trying to get the word out.
We want people to know what's going on. We don't want them looking at the left side of the airplane or the right side. We want them looking at the ground. We want them to educate themselves, and then we hope that they will advocate for what they care about.
So are you going to be telling us about what we're flying over?
Well, I'm not that familiar with this issue. I fly a million issues.
Oh,
but,
I see. So you're like...
So I'm working with these guys, bringing
You're like a
them
mercenary. You'll just go wherever a pilot is needed.
I'm bringing them the benefit of flight.
He's a Han Solo of the environmental movement, guys.
I look more like Choo Choo.
Yeah, I love Choo Choo. Okay, so I don't really know exactly what we're going to be looking at on this flight, but we do have a tour guide who's going to be pointing out all the major landmarks and telling us about, well, I'll let him tell you. This is Patrick Donnelly, and you are...
I'm the Great Basin Director with the Center for Biological Diversity.
Oh, wow. You're a bulldog, too, huh?
You know, we...
Have you been called worse than that?
I have been called worse than that. Actually, someone we're going to fly over later called me a nitwit.
A nitwit?
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But hey, that's high praise where I come from. So what are we looking for on this flight, or what are you going to be pointing out?
Yeah, we're flying over the Amargosa Basin, the heart of which is the Amargosa River, and we're going to be taking a look at all the threats that the Amargosa River faces. So there's gold mining projects, there's solar fields, there's groundwater pumping for residential and agricultural use, and all of these are various threats to the river. And so we're going to be highlighting why the river is special today and the ways that it could be threatened by these projects.
Okay, and so as far as this I know there's a new solar farm going in.
Yeah.
Is that also going to impact the...
You know, the basin as a whole is a home to lots of biodiversity, lots of endangered and threatened species, and the solar farms are taking what's open, pristine desert and paving it over, you know, turning it into full of mirrors. And, you know, we think rooftops are the place to put it, on top of highways, on top of
So you're not like blanket opposed to solar power?
Not at all. We are actually...
And you're not even blanket opposed to solar power in the desert?
It's just the pristine ecosystems that we shouldn't be bulldozing.
So you'd prefer to see it put on like already disturbed land?
Already disturbed lands, agricultural lands, or in the built
rooftops.
Environment.
Yeah,
Rooftops.
every house in this area should have solar
Every
plants on the
single
roof.
rooftop in the state of Nevada should have a solar panel on it, for sure.
Okay, well, we're in agreement on that.
All right.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to the flight. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Seatbelt, headset. Oh, because I'm small, I got stuck in the very back corner of this plane. As we prepared for takeoff and taxied over to the runway, we got a pretty interesting tour of the Pahrump airport along the way, which I didn't even realize there was an airport in Pahrump, but I guess it makes sense since there's 40,000 people living here. It's actually called the Calvada Meadows Airport, and believe it or not, at one time you could actually fly out of here commercially to one destination only, Hawthorne, California, on a tiny regional airline called Advanced Air. But nowadays it's just a private airport where people actually live in homes with their own planes in private hangars, like garages, or even just camp out in trailers. I mean, this is Pahrump, after all. Then we finally took off into the wild blue yonder. Woohoo! No matter how many times I go for an airplane ride, I always marvel at the miracle of flight. And it feels even more exciting in a small plane like this. And it was really cool to see the desert from this perspective. I mean, look how cool those mountains look from up here. I think these mountains here are called the Last Chance Range. What a great name. Anyway, this was only scheduled to be about a 45-minute flight. Our flight plan was to head northwest out of Pahrump to the headwaters of the Amargosa River up near Beatty, Nevada, then circle around and follow the path of the river back down towards Death Valley, while Patrick pointed out a few different things along the way that are impacting the water supply out here. But you know, it also turned out to be a good opportunity for me to see a bunch of other places I've explored from a new perspective. So even though I was trying to stay focused on the Amargosa River and the stuff Patrick was talking about, there was a lot of other cool stuff down below to check out. Like, look at that! We were lucky and it happened to be a super clear day. So clear that we could even see Mount Whitney in the distance. How about that? That's the highest peak in the continental United States. And I've hiked to the top, but this time I was able to enjoy the view while sitting on my keister in an airplane, instead of having to hump my gear all the way to the top on foot. And look at that! That's actually an active cinder mine. Just like that abandoned cinder mine I explored last week, only this one is still operational. And it's funny because I've driven past this thing on the highway dozens of times, and I never realized what it was from down below. Well, I guess there's still active gold mines up here today, and new prospects are still being explored in this area. I mean, Nevada does produce 78% of all the gold in the United States. And matter of fact, 5% of all the gold in the entire world comes out of Nevada. Now, I know gold is important for electronic components, so we have to get it somewhere, but I guess the concern with the way it's mined in Nevada, which is open pit and heap leaching, well, all kinds of nasty chemicals are used in the leaching process to extract the gold from the ore, which could leak down into the groundwater and contaminate the entire water supply. I mean, there's not a lot of water out here to begin with, so you do kind of have to be careful. Anyway, once we got to Beatty, we circled over the headwaters of the Amargosa River near the Spicer Ranch just north of Beatty in the Oasis Valley, and started heading back down southeast towards Death Valley along the path of the mostly underground Amargosa River. Now, all the points of interest regarding the river and its watershed were on the right-hand side of the plain, which is where I was supposed to be looking. But I couldn't help myself. I had to keep looking out the left side, too, because of the awesome view we had of the Nevada National Security Site and the Nevada Test and Training Range, aka all them giant secret government bases that take up a huge chunk of southern Nevada, where Area 51 is. Now, obviously we didn't fly into Area 51 airspace, so we didn't see anything secret, but it was still a cool view that most people don't get. And it's funny because people are always emailing me screenshots from Google Maps of mysterious markings in the desert they think I should go check out. Well, a lot of people don't realize that a significant chunk of land in Nevada is owned by the federal government and is totally off limits to people like me. And this is the closest I'm gonna get. Just south of Beatty, we flew over the U.S. Ecology Site, which is a radioactive waste dump that's basically a landfill for all kinds of toxic goodies. This place actually caught fire back in 2015, and I'm sure the air quality wasn't good for the citizens of Beatty that day, but hey, we have to store these byproducts somewhere, and I guess most people would look at this godforsaken barren wasteland and think this is as good a place as any, which is why I think people like Patrick are so interesting. It takes a special kind of person to get so fired up about protecting a landscape like this. Anyway, our flight path took us southeast through the Amargosa Valley, where we flew over another industry that's having an impact on the watershed here, which is agriculture. You definitely wouldn't expect to see farming in this kind of landscape, and these bright green circles of alfalfa are pretty surreal. So what are they growing all this alfalfa for? Well, I'm sure some of it is exported, but a lot of it is used to feed cows at this giant dairy out here in the middle of the desert. That's right, this is pretty much the last place on the face of the earth I would expect to see a dairy, but the Ponderosa Dairy is the only dairy left in southern Nevada, and I guess it supplies milk to the Las Vegas School District and the casinos. But surprisingly, they also keep some cows that are certified organic, and that milk goes straight to Trader Joe's, of all places. Now, I've never actually been down and explored that dairy from the ground level, although if you read about it online, it sounds like a pretty unpleasant place. I mean, imagine trying to raise cows in the desert outside Death Valley. Supposedly it stinks to high heaven in the summertime and the flies are a terrible nuisance. So I just think it's kind of funny that all them tree-hugging liberals shopping at Trader Joe's probably don't realize they're supporting a facility like this, which I understand is supplying a need, but I guess growing all that alfalfa really is drawing down the water table out here. Anyway, the reason there's so much water out here to be pumped in the first place is because the dairy is right across the highway from Ash Meadows. Ash Meadows is a giant national wildlife refuge where I've made a few videos, and you can see how it's a relatively lush and marshy area compared to the rest of the landscape. Well, I guess that's because it's connected to some kind of vast underground system of ancient fossil water. I mean, if you've watched any of the videos I've made from ground level at Ash Meadows, well, then you've seen for yourself how beautiful the water here is. Almost a supernatural Caribbean turquoise blue color. And then there's the mysterious and seemingly bottomless water-filled cave system called the Devil's Hole, which hasn't even been fully mapped yet, and no one even knows what all it's connected to. Anyway, it's a strikingly unique area and a pretty significant water source for this part of the desert. In fact, there's something like 24 different endemic species in Ash Meadows, which means they live in Ash Meadows and nowhere else on Earth. So you can see how those alfalfa farms drawing down the water table could pose a pretty big risk to the wildlife here. Now, unfortunately, we ran short on time before we were able to fly over the third point of interest that's threatening the ecosystem out here, which was that solar farm I talked about at the beginning of the video. These long, lonely desert roads take forever when you're driving on them, but everything goes much faster from up in the air, and before I knew it, we were already approaching the little airport in Pahrump and getting ready to land. And from this perspective, you can really see how Pahrump has grown up to sprawl all over this valley. The population might be pushing 40,000, but it's pretty low density. I mean, just look at all the open space, which I guess is part of what draws people to move here in the first place, and why many of them were opposed to that solar farm going in. Because the folks in Pahrump want plenty of space to roam around their home on the range, and they don't want to be fenced in. Woohoo! Nice smooth landing, Bruce. Hey Bruce, thank you so much for that flight. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great.
Now, if people want to learn more about what you do, where can they find more information?
We have a website called ecoflight.org.
Ecoflight.org.
Yeah,
Awesome. Okay.
We are a nonprofit. We love gifts and donations, grants. That's how we can afford to bring this incredible scene. I mean, this is quite a landscape. It's really important.
It was an
really
amazing
beautiful.
flight. Okay, cool. So ecoflight.org, and if you want to make a donation, Bruce would appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, wow, that flight was amazing. I think we were only about 2,000 feet above the ground for most of the flight. So you could really see all the details. And oh my God, I shot a lot of amazing footage that I can use as B-roll in future videos. But seriously, when do you ever get a chance to look at things from that perspective that close? Awesome. Awesome opportunity, and also an awesome opportunity to spy on the secret government base in Area 51. Anyway, we didn't end up having enough time to fly over that solar plant that's being built, but, you know, after talking to Patrick, come to find out, I guess solar plants in general don't use that much water to keep the panels clean. It's really just a matter of disturbing that desert crust and, well, creating dusty conditions for all of us. So hopefully people will start putting more solar on rooftops and on previously disturbed sites, like this empty lot in Pahrump that I pulled over into because, man, I really had to take a whiz after that flight, and there's no bathroom at the Pahrump airport.